Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith. We're going to look at the advanced output portion of Premiere Pro going out to 5.1. There's a link. I'll have that for the intro to 5.1, which is basically how to make the tracks, how to automate the tracks before you export out. This is all about exporting and the many settings that we have. I have to have a shout out to the amazing Charles Van Winkle, who is a computer engineer and an audio engineer and a classically trained musician at Adobe Systems, who basically, these are his notes. I had no idea about all of these settings, so if you've ever wondered about them, these are the settings. Let's get into them. So first of all, I have 5.1 output right here. So this sequence is already created at 5.1 in the tutorial before this. We're going to export this out in the File menu, Export, Media. And what's important to understand is not every video format supports 5.1 output. So if you're scratching your head and going, how come this format doesn't support that? It doesn't. That's like going from Photoshop with layers to JPEG and thinking you have layers. Adobe makes sure that when they make the files that they're abiding by, in our case, Dolby Digital settings. So if Dolby says you can do it, you can do it. If Dolby says you can't do it, as much as Premiere Pro wants to do it, it's not going to do it. So all of the settings are based on Dolby. So up at the top, we're going to choose H.264. You could actually choose anything else that supports it, like MPEG-2, Blu-ray, DVD. Lots of formats support it, but we're going to jump into H.264 and primarily look at the audio portion. I've closed all of these up just to make this a little bit easier to understand. Now, the first one up here, which a lot of times will default to AAC, and AAC stands for Advanced Audio Coding, and I'll have a bunch of links in the description for you to get more information. It's a good codec for mobile and web. It's an MPEG-based codec like MP3, but we don't care about that. We're going to go to Dolby Digital. So that's the first thing, the audio format settings. And when you change that one, then you'll see things change here. So if I go back to AAC, you'll see I do get the choice of 5.1, but I'm going to go back to Dolby Digital. I could choose different AAC versions here, but like I said, we're going to be doing Dolby Digital. So it defaults to 6, I can't change that. 48K, I can't change that. I can go in here and choose Dolby Digital Plus. The biggest difference between Dolby Digital and Digital Plus is 5.1 in Dolby Digital, 7.1 in Digital Plus. Dolby Digital is also called AC3 or DD. The basic Dolby codec is used in cinema, in DVDs, and over-air broadcast, part of the ATSC standard. See, this is why I got all the notes from Charles. I would never know all this stuff. Dolby Digital Plus is EC3, also called DD Plus. It's the successor to DD and AC3, much like the AAC is the successor of MP3, and it goes up to 7.1. Okay, so those are the first two settings. Next is the bit rate setting in here, where you can change the amount of the bit rate in kilobits per second. Now, this is probably the first place that people start going crazy and I'm going to turn this up. If you don't know what you're doing, and I don't, I'm going by the presets inside here. Higher numbers are going to have a larger flow of data, but that's the bit rate setting. Down in the configuration, there's a default down in here. Now, this parameter is only for Dolby Digital and Dolby Digital Plus. You won't see this for any of the other formats. It's a channel configuration. This is the way they do channel layout in Dolby Digital and Dolby Digital Plus streams as required by Dolby. So if you're using a really old version of Premiere Pro, the order of these numbers is probably different. For years, Premiere Pro was outputting the channels to different numbers. When I open this up, you'll see multiple choices. And again, this is based on what Dolby wanted. The LFE is not in here. So if you're wondering how come 3 plus 2 equals 5, where's the sixth one? That's this one over here, Enable LFE. So the first one is 1-to-1, one channel plus one channel, two channels, not stereo. This is basically dual mono. All right, the next one is one channel, and it's basically one channel in the front, none in the back. 2.0 is two front, none in the back. This is stereo left and right. 3 is left and right center, and the LFE, which is the subwoofer. 2 and 1 is two in the front, one in the back, stereo left and right, plus center surround, and the LFE. This is 3.1 left, right, center, LFE, center surround. 2 and 2. Left, right, LFE, left center, left surround, no center, and this is the one that's basically the same as 5.1. You will notice this change if I turn this on and off. See, the LFE is out of there. And then we've got dialogue normalization down here. And right off the bat, Charles says, this is a complicated topic. I've got a link in the description for you to get more information. It's a weird measurement of loudness that can be embedded into Dolby Digital stream that tells the downstream AV receiver in the home how to mix the audio. Example, if night or quiet mode is turned on. So you might have those options in your receiver. It is often set incorrectly. If done wrong, some downstream AV receivers might play the audio too loud to compensate or too quiet to compensate. Best to leave it at the default if you don't know what you're doing. So when I opened up configuration after choosing H.264, that bottom configuration was the default. That's the one you want to use. If you change it to any of the other ones, you're going to remove the channels that you have. They won't be there. Okay, so that's the configuration. We go back to the bit stream information, and this is the stuff, again, because I chose Dolby or Dolby Digital. So it's a flag that's set in the bit stream indicating what sort of content it is. The copyright bit flag in the stream is if the stream is copyrighted. Supposedly downstream devices would prohibit copying if it's in here, but not a lot of hardware honors this. Remember, a lot of these settings are flags or settings that you don't hear. They're not going to make a difference in what you hear. It's just when the device at the other end gets the stream and it's looking through the metadata and it finds, oh, this is a copywritten bit, it's supposed to say, oh, you can't copy it. The original bit stream is information only. It just indicates if this is the original master. The surround EX mode down here at the bottom tells the downstream receiver if it should use this or not. The option is only available if there are at least 2 surround channels. Okay. Next up is the downmix metadata. So the downmix metadata tells the downstream decoder, again, the receiver, how the content, if it's more than stereo, should be mixed to stereo. Because, you know, here's my example. In my main living room upstairs, I have 2 speakers. And in my home theater downstairs, I have 5.1, actually 7.1 surround sound. But I can play the same material and I'm not missing anything upstairs in the stereo because the player knows how to play this back. The Yamaha receiver that I have is reading this information and it knows when there's only 2 speakers plugged in, so it now changes what's going out to those 2 and not missing the rest. So that's what this information here, it's basically, it tells what to do with the surround sound mix when you don't have those speakers. The mix levels just give specific downmix coefficients when summing to stereo. So how do you turn down the center channel before mixing it to left and right? This is why I asked an engineer these questions. Again, I'm going to be using the presets. All right, so let's get out of the downmix. There's a pre-processing, and that's basically the DC high-pass filter. It adds a high-pass filter to the main channels, not the LFE, before encoding. This might allow for a lower bit rate or better quality at particular bit rates by taking out super lows in the LCR, LSRS. So if you don't need the giant amount of LFE in those channels, then remove them, but don't take them out of the LFE. Every single bit of information you can remove out of some of these channels is going to reduce the amount of data that's needed. All right, there's also an LFE low-pass filter. It adds a low-pass filter to the LFE channel prior to encoding. Same thing, taking out the high frequencies in the LFE that aren't needed because that LFE does not play the high frequencies. It's strictly the sub frequencies. And then there's a 90-degree shift. It only applies to surround channels. A 180-degree shift would be the equivalent to polarity inversion, which is like flipping the phase. 90 degrees is slightly more complicated concept to grasp. It can affect how the surround down mix to stereo and making it easier to extract them when doing Dolby Stereo up mixing. The 3 dB attenuation just drops the surround channels by 3 dB before encoding. If we go a little bit further down here, the dynamic range control, these options tell, again, the downstream decoder receiver how to compress the audio when going out to line level out or old analog TV. So I think one of the problems some people have is they'll look at something and they'll see the word film and they're going out to 5.1 and they'll think, I want to make this film. This is for going out to a line out or to an old ass stereo TV. And then the last one, audio production information. These are various options that tell the downstream decoder on how the audio was mixed. The A to D converter type, if the audio went through an HD CD converter, when the decoder downstream can do the right, then the decoder can do the right thing going the other way. The peak mix level, the loudness sound pressure level that was measured during the mix. Basically, you need to have an SPL meter that measures what is coming to your speakers. And the last one is the room type. It indicates if you mix this to a small room or to a full Hollywood mixing stage. So there you go. Thanks to Charles Van Winkle at Adobe for walking me through all of this, because there is a lot of settings in there. And unless you're a computer and audio engineer like him, you're probably scratching your head and wondering what they are. What would I do? I'd use all the damn defaults. That's it works for me. And if you watch my previous tutorial on how to set this up, there's also a link to download a test file that I created using H.264 output directly, 5.1 and 5.1 mixing automation in Premiere Pro. All right, hopefully you found this informative. If you're new to Video Revealed, come on and take a moment and subscribe. And if you want to support us a little bit more, join us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Till next time, I'm Colin Smith, and it's my job to get the information from brainy guys like Charles and to get you looking and sounding your best.